Welcome, travelers, to the third part of my favorite Thomas episodes list. This time, I'll be talking about my favorite season out of all of Thomas the Tank Engine with the third season. Yes, I am aware that this is only part 3 of my list, and while I personally think that the other 2 seasons I'll be talking about are better in terms of writing and the set designs compared to the other seasons, I found that this season was the most nostalgic for me as I remember the sets, character designs, and writing the most from this season as we had more VHS tapes from this season. So, without further ado, here are my 10 favorite episodes of Season 3. Number 30. Donald's Duck. The first episode on my list focuses on 2 of my favorite characters from Season 2, that being Duck and one half of the Scottish twins, Donald. The episode is about Duck getting his own branch line for doing a good job helping the other engines. This leads to him, Toby, and Donald building a new station on his branch line. Unfortunately, this goes to Duck's head where he won't stop talking about how important he is. Eventually, Donald gets fed up and starts making fun of Duck to get him to shut up so he can get some sleep, which leads to Duck's driver and fireman to play a trick on Donald by leaving a duckling in his water tank. Which, now that I think about it, sounds like animal cruelty as the duckling would have suffocated. But in all honesty, I do like this episode because it had some pretty funny moments in it, and I think this is where I noticed that the music was improved from the first 2 seasons, which, while they had some great music, didn't really stand out to me as the songs I thought of when it came to this series. Well, except for one, but we'll get to that in a little while. Number 29. Thomas, Percy, and the Mail Train. This is another episode that I think of when it comes to the great atmosphere and music from the show. Thomas and Percy are the 2 engines that deliver the mail train late at night and enjoy this job very much. However, when Henry arrives late from getting the mail from the docks, the manager of the post complains and plans on getting rid of the mail train for how late they were. But because of a man missing his train and Thomas helping him get home, the post manager decides not to get rid of the train after receiving a thank you letter from the man. While I agree that Season 4 had the much better looking designs for the show, I didn't watch that many episodes of Season 4 as a kid since we mostly owned the episodes of Seasons 2 and 3. And this episode is one that I remember watching the most from Season 3. It has such beautiful sets, and I still remember the song that came from this episode called Night Train, which has a very haunting yet energetic vibe to it. I listen to this song a lot because it builds up the atmosphere that was known from the series. It made you feel you were on this adventure escaping from some evil villain that was hunting you through the night. It's an episode that honestly made me love the nighttime so much as a kid, and it also takes me back to playing with my toy trains with my brothers. Number 28. Heroes. Probably one of the few episodes that I liked that starred Bill and Ben. Bill and Ben are asked by Sir Topham Hatt to help out the other engines at the docks. However, they get tricked by the freight cars and make Gordon late for his evening train. The next day, they both hear a strange noise at the quarry, which leads to a rock slide where the twins help the workmen escape from being killed. For those who don't know, Bill and Ben are considered the worst characters on the show for just being really obnoxious and annoying, which I will agree in the later seasons as their voices do get ungodly annoying. But I like this episode mostly for the amazing destruction of the quarry, as well as the dock sets, and the twins have their moments in this episode with them caring about the workmen enough to save their lives. Number 27. Thomas and Percy's Mountain Adventure. Another great Christmas-themed episode that was changed to Thanksgiving when it was released out here in the West. Thomas has a special line where he delivers mail to a mountain village. However, during a blizzard, he and Percy must help dig them out from the snow, which the villagers thank all of the engines for helping them by setting up their sheds for a massive Christmas party. I don't know why, but for some reason this show did a lot of great Christmas episodes, and I think that has to do with the fact that they never felt like they were in your face with the commercialism or the overused family get-together episodes that many other shows were doing at the time. It honestly took the more negative side of the holidays and made it about the engines either just celebrating the holiday or helping out others to enjoy the holiday. I think that's why as a kid, and even as an adult, I look at the holidays as a time to be better to others because the rest of the year just sucks for so many people. Whether it be from overworking to losing a loved one, Christmas is a time to make someone else happy because everyone deserves to be happy at any time of the year. Number 26. Mavis and Toby's Tightrope. Another 2 episodes that introduced one of the few good Diesel Train characters, Mavis. In these episodes, Mavis is a young and brash character that thinks she knows everything and thinks that Toby, who she helps on his line, is a fusspot that doesn't know anything. But she ends up learning the hard way that she doesn't know any better after she gets stuck at a crossing and becomes a better engine for it in the 2nd episode where she saves Toby from falling into a raging river after she tried to go over Toby's line. I'd say that these are 2 episodes that are good examples of showing someone getting put in their place for having an overinflated ego. Episodes where someone who thinks they know better but ends up being shown that they don't and that they do learn from their mistakes. And these episodes show what Mavis did wrong, and she learns from it by helping Toby out of an accident that she caused, and she's willing to admit her mistake to Sir Topham Hatt, and that she is willing to learn from Toby. Though I will admit that I do like Toby's Tightrope a little more for it having the more suspenseful moments when Toby is dangling from the edge of a collapsed bridge. I didn't watch it as much since we never owned the tape for the episode, but I still have fond memories of these stories and are ones that I come back to a lot. Number 25. Escape. Honestly, this is a very dark episode that asks the question, can these trains die? Douglas gets annoyed with Edward as he keeps talking with Trevor and not doing his work. However, Edward tells Douglas that he and Trevor have something in common. They were both saved from being scrapped. Later that night, Douglas is taking some cars to the scrapyard where he meets Oliver and Toad, who are trying to escape from being scrapped. Douglas remembers Edward's story and decides to save Oliver and Toad, who end up working on Duck's branch line. This episode is another that introduced some of my favorite characters from the show, much like how Rusty to the Rescue introduced Stepney, which is sort of a sequel to this episode. However, one thing about this episode that I find interesting is that it asks the question, can these characters actually die? Which is a dark thought when you consider that this series showed many engines' corpses which are broken down and made into other pieces of metal for the rest of the engines to use as building material for different parts of the railway. Fans have even created many fanfics from episodes like this, including the Kildane experiment and the Half Engine, which I highly recommend if you want to see Thomas the Tank Engine do horror stories that aren't too scary for kids. As for this episode, it's not meant to be horrifying, but it's still a fun rescue episode for one of my favorite characters and has some great music to boot. Number 24. Diesel Does It Again. This episode was the return of one of the few villains on the show, and it still has him as this evil and devious character. Percy and Duck are stuck at the docks where the work has piled up to the point that Sir Topham Hatt decides to send them some help. Unfortunately, the only engine that's available is Diesel, an engine who in the previous season was a troublemaker and tried to send Duck away, and he's up to his old tricks again. Which leads to Sir Topham Hatt sending him away after his antics cause him to lose a lot of clay into the sea. This episode has more great sets from the docks and has some great music as well, though the main reason I like it is because Diesel's antics are fun to watch. I don't think it was a great return of one of the only villains in the show, but it was still fun to see his return, and this episode was one of his better appearances compared to later seasons. Number 23. James Goes Buzz Buzz. Probably one of the most famous episodes of the original series, and the most popular episode involving James. James is passing by the vicar's orchard where he stops to talk to Trevor, asking about the noise he hears, which are the vicar's bees. However, he gets annoyed when Boko tells him that bees are dangerous and will sting you, which James just thinks are nothing but annoying pests and can be easily brushed off. However, once one of the vicar's beehives gets broken at the station, James soon learns how deadly bees can be. This is just a funny episode where James gets his comeuppance for not taking bees seriously and getting an attitude adjustment towards the other engines, particularly Boko, who is just trying to be helpful and friendly, but James acts like a jackass for no reason, so him getting stung by the bee was sort of a retribution. Plus, as a kid, I loved the scene of the bee stinging James and his nose getting bright red, as the 2D animation on the bee is some of the finest blend of live action and animation since Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Number 22. Edward, Trevor, and the Really Useful Party. Probably my favorite Trevor-related episode, even if it is one that has very little of the main cast in it. The vicar is raising funds so that he can send some children to the beach who are too poor to go there. With the help of Trevor and Edward, they are able to raise enough funds from the party so that the children are able to go to the beach. I honestly like this episode because it's one that has some great world building on the show for the road characters, including Bertie and Terrence. I know that this show is meant to focus on the steam trains and their adventures, but it's nice to see the other characters on Sodor and what they do when the engines aren't around. Number 21. Henry's Forest. This is the episode that I think finally broke Henry away from being another Gordon-type character and made him the gentle giant that most fans came to know him as. Henry has a special place on the island that he goes to when he wants to feel at peace, and that is dubbed by the residents of the island as his forest. However, after a severe storm, Henry's forest is destroyed, and he has to take the debris to the timber mills so that the trees can be remade into useful items. But while Henry is still sad to see his forest destroyed, Toby and Sir Topham Hatt give him a surprise with freight cars filled with new trees. I find myself feeling the same way as Henry does when I think of this episode, having a peaceful and calming feeling, especially when it comes to the music. The Henry's Forest theme is the most beautiful song in the whole show, and I listen to it all the time, whether it be the original or a remix version, when I want to go to sleep or relax. The rest of the episode, like I said before, is the best Henry episode because it made Henry an actual character rather than him being a copy of Gordon or constantly sick like in previous and later episodes. This is the version of Henry that I latched onto as a kid because of his kind and gentle nature, and this episode shows the best quality of his character.